Welcome to the next video in the Suggestion App course. This is a complete course where we'll build a .NET 6 Blazor server application with MongoDB from the ground up. There are three things you need to know before we get started. First, this is part of a series, and this isn't the first video in the series. If you're just starting out, you should check out the playlist that's linked in the description to start from the first video in the series. Second, this course is actually a paid course. MongoDB sponsored it so you can put the videos on YouTube for free. Check out the link in the description to sign up for MongoDB Atlas for free to thank them if you haven't already. Third, you can also buy this course on IamTimCorey.com. The link is in the description. Buying this course will get you all the lessons right away, the source code for each lesson, a certificate of completion, offline access, and more. It also helps sponsor more free content. The video will be the same as it is on YouTube, so feel free to watch the free version if you want to. Okay, let's jump into today's video. Note there may be more than one lesson in this video, since some lessons are short. Now that we have our data access complete, let's start building out our Blazor site. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to build a page that's just a sample page. It's just for creating our starter data. This is not something we'll take into production. We're just going to create a page that for now creates our starter data, and in the long run will at least create the methods we need to set up our starter data. We can then move them into a more permanent location later on. So right-click on Pages, Add, New Razor Component. A Razor component and a Razor page are different. A Razor component is a Blazor page. Yes, I know it's confusing. It comes up every time we do anything with Blazor, but a Razor component is what you want, not a Razor page. The two are very, very different. And we're going to call this sample data. And this is our page. So let's put a space between sample and data, and I am going to give this page a name. So at page, and let's call this sample data, like so. This is how we'll access this page, is by going to our site /sample data. Now we need to bring in some stuff from dependency injection. So inject, and we'll bring in the iCategory data. We'll call it category data. Now, if this did not work for you, if you have things saying, hey, I can't find this in the context, then you probably did not add this to your global usings. Remember, our global usings have these two entries right here, and we're just now using this entry, which is the data access entry. So make sure you have that. Inject iStatus data, close status data. Now what we're going to do on this page is fairly simple. We're going to have a lookup that says, hey, is there any category data already in place? And if not, create it. And we're going to have the same thing for status data. Hey, give me all the status data, and if there's nothing in place, then go ahead and create it. So we'll have our sample data, and then we'll have our call to actually load up these two things. Now, this is all in manual code. So private async task create categories. Let's call it create categories, even though it's going to make sure the categories don't exist first. So the first we're going to do is say, we'll do a lookup. And so we're going to say var categories equals await category data dot get all categories. Now that should return back to us a list of category model. But if it's null or it has 0 entries, that means that we don't have any categories listed. So if categories (dot count) equals 0, it's greater than 0. So what it's going to do is say, hey, if it's not null, that's what question mark is here for. If it's not null, then continue on. But if it is null, we're not going to pass the if statement. We're going to go outside of it. So if it is not null, what's the count? If the count is greater than 0, that means you already have categories in place, in which case, return. Because we don't want to add the categories a second time. But now we know that there are no categories because it's either null, which is why it escaped the if, or the count was not greater than 0, meaning there's nothing in the list. In that case, we're going to add our categories. So category model, let's call it cat, equals new. And then we'll do our curly braces here. And we'll probably semicolon at the end. It does this indent thing. I'm not a big fan of it, but category name, we're going to hard code these because this is sample data, or star data, I'm sorry. Courses, category description equals full paid courses, like so. And that would be our first category. So we're going to say await category data dot create category cat. So now we have one category created in theory, as long as our code all works. But now we can do is copy all but the actual declaration. So this right through here. Copy this, paste it here. And now we can say dev questions and advice on being a developer. If you haven't checked out the dev questions series or podcast, definitely check it out. Okay, next one we're going to have is in-depth tutorials. And these are a deep dive video on how to use a topic. This is our Monday videos. And then we'll do another one for our 10-minute training. And these videos are a quick, I need to escape the quotes here. How do I use this? Escape the quotes again, video. That way we can have quotes inside of our string. So it's a quick, how do I use this video? And that's what these escape characters help us do, is keep these quotes as part of the string. Okay, so that is the standard ones, and we'll have one other called other, just in case there's something that doesn't fit in one of the categories. Not sure which category this fits in. So those are our categories, and that should create all of them. Now, why am I doing it this way instead of having something a little bit more, I don't know, not hard-coded maybe? Well, the reason why is because this is our starter data that we want to have in our database to start. It gives us a good place to start from, and we don't have a normal mechanism in place to create categories and statuses. So we're just going to hard code this in here for now. In the future, in a version 1.5, 2, whatever, we may decide that we want to allow the categories and statuses to be modified by an administrator while the site is running, not just hard coded, in which case we take it out of here. But this is perfect for a starter project for version 1, for an MVP. This is the way to go. Don't overthink things, okay? Yes, I know some people cry out in pain whenever they see a string inside of your code because it means that that string cannot be changed without recompiling the application. But it's not the end of the world. In fact, it's the right choice to make here. So let's minimize this for now. We're going to say private async task create statuses and do the same basic system. So we're going to first get all of our statuses. So var statuses equals await status data dot get all statuses. like so. And then if statuses question mark dot count is greater than 0, return, and that just X's out for us. And if not, then we're going to start creating our statuses. Now we can do it like we did before, where we did a where we create the class first and then we add it, or we could do it in line, where we just create the status or status right in line. I'm going to do it the same way as before, but I like to have that same pattern. So let's say var stat equals new, and then we'll do our, on the new line here, like so. And in here, we're going to say status name. Whoops, not var stat. I need to have a status model. There we go. Not status mod. There we go. Status model. So status name completed. And then status description equals, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave that blank. I'm not going to keep typing those out over and over for us because of the fact they are a bit longer, especially in this one. So what I'll do is I'll just copy and paste those from my notes. So let me grab that and paste it in. So the suggestion was accepted and the corresponding item was created. That's our entry. So now we can say await status data dot create status stat. So that will create our first status. We can grab right up through here, not the definition too. And now we have our next one, which is watching. And again, I will copy our description and paste it in here to make our life a little easier. And then we're going to copy this again. And we'll paste this in. And this time it's going to be upcoming. Let me grab the description for that soon. Or grab that description for that. And we'll say upcoming. And I didn't copy enough. There we go. We'll paste in that description. So that's upcoming. And we need another one. And this will be dismissed. And again, let me copy and paste the description for that. Okay, so now those are our statuses. These are the statuses that admins will apply to suggestions. So we have completed, watching, upcoming, and dismissed. Now note, there are other statuses, or there's a non-status that will be the normal. So there's not a just normal suggestion, it's just a normal suggestion. There's no status applied to it. So these are only statuses that will adjust off the normal. So for example, hey, we're watching this one, or hey, this one's upcoming. So now we can save this. And we have two methods now. We have create statuses and create categories. We could do something where we have this complicated system for showing off all the stuff that's going to happen. But I think what we're going to do instead is just say, let's create a button. Button class equals btn and btn dash, oh, primary is fine. And we'll say on click equals create categories. Like so. And then we'll say create categories. Like so. And that is yelling at me. I'm not sure why. Oh, there it goes. Sometimes it takes a minute for the system to figure everything out, and that's okay. I'm going to create one more button. Again, primary, and this one's going to be create statuses. And that's all these two are going to do, except the fact that I won't know when these are done. So let's create a couple of variables here. So bool categories created equals false. And we should make it private. It is private by default, but it's best to specify it. Statuses created equals false. So at the end of these methods, what we'll do is we will set the categories created equals true. And we'll do the same thing for statuses, where we'll set the statuses created to true. And now up here in our code, we can say, you know what, let's wrap the button. So I'm going to cut this out, and I will say if, and this is categories created, so if it's true, then we can just have a H4 that says the categories have been created, else, oops, there's the button. So the button will show initially because this is false. But once we set the value to true, we'll see this message instead of the button, so you can't create it again. You can't click it again. Not that it will make a big of a difference, but just to make things a little bit nicer. And again, this is just a demo page. If statuses created H4, statuses have been created, else, there's our button for statuses. Again, this is a way to just make it a little bit prettier and make it work kind of nice, but again, it's just a demo page. So at this point, we want to test this out, because as soon as you have something you can test, do it. Now, right now we have, I'm connected to MongoDB Compass, which is connected to my Atlas. And I have, if you notice, 4 different databases. They're all testing databases. So actually 2 of them are Atlas databases, so admin and local. But TestDB and ShoreDB, these are test databases. There's nothing really in them. So with those 4 databases, we don't have anything for our suggestion app. Remember, it's called Dev Suggestion DB, I believe. Let's go back and look at our app settings.json. It's called Dev Suggestion App. That's our database name. So we don't have that one yet, but if we run this app and go to sample data, we should get something. So let's launch this. Wait for it to launch. Wait for it to launch. There we go. So now we can go to sample data. And we have 2 buttons. So we have create categories. Let's do that. We'll click on it. We'll wait for it. Categories have been created. Statuses. Click on it and wait for it. Statuses have been created. Let's come back over here to my Compass. I'll refresh. You'll notice now I have a Dev Suggestion App database. Let's click on it. It has 2 collections, one with categories, one with statuses. So statuses, we have, let's zoom in here a little bit so you can see it better. We have our 4 suggestions, or 4 statuses, I'm sorry. And then if we go to categories, we'll see our 5 categories as well. So everything is creating correctly, and we can now see that our page properly loads. So that allows us to have our statuses and categories ready to go. We don't have to worry about setting those up or how to get our database initialized. We have this page, we just click 2 buttons and we're good to go. So let's close this out. This page is now done. Again, we're only going to keep this as long as it takes to do testing and development, and then we'll move these methods off into probably our class library somewhere where we have some type of initialization process that we go through for all new databases. Because we could delete the database and start over. And for dev and staging, that's totally fine. Now, for production, you don't want to do that. But for dev and staging, that's fine. And this way, we can reinitialize the database with the standard values we want. All right, so that's all we're going to do for generating the starter data. We have our starter data, but we still need to have some sample data to put into our database for testing purposes. When you first start up a database, it has no suggestions, it has no users, and it has no interactivity or life. So you have to create all the sample stuff in order to see, hey, what does it look like when a suggestion is marked as completed? Hey, what does it look like when a user has multiple suggestions? Hey, what does it look like when a suggestion has been upvoted? And whether you have upvoted or somebody else has upvoted it. So there's a lot of stuff that we want to see when we start building out the rest of our pages, so we can just load it up and see that, in fact, our code works, hopefully, and we can see how it works and how it looks. This will be very important once we get to styling our application, where we want to make sure that things lay out properly and have the right colors and all the rest. Well, we have to have examples to see them in action. So on this sample data page, we have already created these private or categories and statuses. These are valid methods we'll keep long term. But then let's create another method, private async task generate sample data. And this one we're not going to keep long term. This is just for, or at least we're not going to keep this for anything but our dev environment potentially, or our staging environment. But we're not going to keep this for production. We're never going to use this on a production style database. This is just for our testing purposes. So what we need to do here is we need to create a number of things. Let's start with a user. Now this is all going to be sample data. So user model, user equals new. And then in here we'll say first name equals Tim and last name equals Corey. And we'll say the email address equals tim@test.com because we're not actually verifying this. Display name equals Tim Corey. I might even say sample Tim Corey. How about that? That way we know that this is a sample, not the real Tim Corey that we're going to create later. Object identifier ABC-123. That's not a real identifier, but what that does, it gets us something to put in that field. We'll never match this up with anything from Active Directory, but that's okay. This gives us our sample user, and now we just need to create this. User data, which we haven't brought in yet. Let's do that. Inject user data, and let's also bring in the suggestion data, called suggestion data. So now we can say await our user data dot create user. It'll pass in our user. So now we have a user, but what we're going to do is we're now going to find that user. And the reason why is because we want to make sure we have the unique identifier that MongoDB creates. And this will also give us a chance to verify and validate that our find users works. So what we'll do is we'll say var users equals await user data dot get user. We can get user from authentication. Let's do that. Let's just call this found user equals get user from authentication, and we'll pass in that object identifier of ABC123. And what this will do is it will return back for us a task of user model, which we're awaiting. Therefore, this is going to be a user model of the found user. So this is now the user we've looked up in our database. Now we have that, what we can do is we can get a few more things. Var categories equals await category data dot get all categories. And then var statuses equals await status data dot get all statuses. That'll give us the information right from the database with the correct IDs and everything else for then doing this next step, which is going to be suggestion model. Suggestion equals new. And then in here we'll say author equals new basic user model for found user. Category, we're going to choose a category for this at random. Let's say we're going to say categories at position 0. The suggestion equals our first suggestion. And the description equals this is a suggestion created by the sample data generation method. Like so, put a period at the end. And we're going to not give that a status. So now we have our first suggestion. We can say await suggestion data dot create suggestion. We're going to pass in our suggestion. And this will create for us our first suggestion that has a suggestion, a description, a category, and an author. That's all it will have. Next up, we're going to copy this. We're going to paste it again. And this time, same user, category, let's choose 1. And we'll say our second suggestion. We'll leave the description alone, but this time we're going to give it a suggestion status. And we're going to say statuses. And we'll choose the first status. Now, we also have the owner notes. This is the note for the status, something like that. And we'll create that suggestion. We'll again copy this, and we'll paste it again. And we're going to say this is category number 2. Remember, there's 5 categories. So we can go 0 to 4. And there are 4 statuses. We can go 0 to 3. So we'll just start changing these a little bit randomly, and then we'll create it again. And this is our third category and our second status, and it's our 4th suggestion. I'll paste it again, and this is our 4th category and our 3rd status, and this is our 5th suggestion. So this just gives an example of one of each, just so we have some suggestions in the list. They're all based upon the same author. So that's all we really need there. And then what we'll do is let's put some votes on some of these. So we have user votes dot equals new. And then we can, let's see, this is a hash set of strings. Let's actually do this. Let's create our hash set outside. Just makes things easier. So we're going to say hash set of type string equals new, like so. And we'll say, oops, we got to give it a name. And we'll say votes.add. This should be the identifier of the person who created it, but we can, again, just cheat this a little bit and just say 1, 2, and 3. We can't have to have a unique vote, but that would be the identifier of the person who voted for it. We don't really care. We just need to know that, hey, we have some votes. So we're going to say user votes equals votes, like so. And now that one will have some votes to it. That's it. We're just going to have one that has votes. We're going to have multiple. I don't think we need to have more than that, do we? Well, for the sake of completion, votes.add for, like so, and then we'll say that user votes equals votes. Like so now we have two that have votes and they have different numbers. So with that, I think we have everything we need to create our sample data. We have a sample user, we have a sample suggestion, actually multiple suggestions, and they have associated with them categories, statuses, and all the rest. So we can now call this method, generate sample data. Class equals btn dash, let's say danger. This is sample data we're creating that has no idea or thought of not creating more than once. So it will create as many times as you want it to be. On click equals generate sample data. Like so. So this thing's going to run no matter what. We're only going to click this once. This is just for us to test out. But this way we can hopefully create some more data and have something for our pages to load once we get to that point. Okay, generate sample data. I'm going to click it. I'm going to wait, and it's done. That little red outline went away once it was done. If we go back here to our collection, we can actually refresh here. There we go. And now we have category statuses, suggestions, and users. So we have one user. You can zoom in and see here that we have the user. And note that they haven't voted on anything, but we do have 4 authored suggestions. So that the idea of creating that transaction and saying, hey, not only do you create a suggestion, but we're also going to put on your user object that you created that suggestion, that worked. So those are now associated. And if you go to suggestions here, we'll see we have multiple suggestions with some of them have votes. So this one has votes. They have authors. They have category. They have a status for some of them. And we also have the approved, rejected, and archived. So all that is set for us. The only thing I didn't do was set some of these as true for release. We can do that. Just set the true and then hit update. Let's do that for actually all of them. That way they show up on the main page without us having to create that page to approve things. So set all, just double click on it and then double click again. Set it to a valid value for a Boolean. So that would be true. And then hit the update. They'll update our 5 values. So now when we start working with our data, we start creating real pages, we'll actually see something populate on the page. So now we're entirely done with our sample data. We can move on. Don't click that button multiple times. It'll cause havoc, but once is fine just to generate some sample data for you.